Hello and welcome to another wonderful day with Speaking for Him. I'm Dan Van Zalen, and here's your host, Andrew Gomison.
And Dan, it's nice to be with you today, and you may notice the lack of background music today. For the episodes we're recording tonight, it's going to be, in essence, Speaking for Him unplugged, because we had a technical difficulty that does not allow us to access our musical files or the other beds that we routinely use. And so we're going at it all natural, as they would say, just our voices. And so we'll see how this goes. But we are going to start this episode about Overcomer, the latest Kendrick Brothers film, with a quote of the day. Dan?
Your identity will be tied to whatever your heart is tied to. Overcomer.
All right. I got a chance to see this movie a couple weeks ago, and as far as I know, it's still in theaters, and I would really encourage people to go see this. I think I remember saying at the time that I recorded my War Room review that I felt like War Room was kind of a step back. It felt like a conglomeration of their other films, didn't seem creative or unique enough, even though it was good. When you put it up against the other films they did, I just didn't feel like it had as much new to it. But this show, Overcomer, really brings some new originality to it. And so I'm excited to dig into this film. And sadly, Dan didn't get a chance to watch it, so we can't discuss it, but Dan is here to direct the discussion. And
Yes.
So, Dan, why don't we begin?
Okay, we'll start with the movie trailer, perhaps.
Yes, that would be good. I'm kind of thrown off. Music means more than you think.
It does.
You need to do your fighting in prayer.
You've been a good enough father. I want to be a good enough father.
Let's go, let's go!
The town's oldest manufacturing plant is closing its doors.
Most of my players have parents that work at the plant. This ain't gonna be pretty.
I'm down 3 coaches, but I do think I have a solution for cross country.
No, I don't even like running. Don't die. Don't die. Cross country's not even a real sport.
Why would anyone want to do this?
I'm just impressed that you finished.
You are my best option.
Y'all here for tryouts?
No, sir. We're just hanging out.
Hey, are you here for cross country?
Yes, sir.
I had one girl show up and she's got asthma.
Oh, you mean Hannah Scott. Do you enjoy running?
It's really the only thing I'm good at.
Why have a season with one runner?
One runner matters.
Thomas, you got time for a visit?
Hello, coach. So you changed sports, and you still got no team. Well, that's sad even for me.
I get it. You have to coach cross country, but it's not the end of the world.
For someone who knows the Lord, you're acting like somebody who doesn't.
You give some very inspirational speeches to your players about stepping up under pressure and going the extra mile.
Anna, you're getting faster.
Your life is worth so much more than this.
To who?
When you find your identity in the one who created you, it'll change your whole perspective. Something or someone will have first place in your heart.
Where's your team?
She's right there.
What have you allowed to define you?
Is that?
That's Hannah.
Run,
And there you have it.
All right, there you have it, the trailer for Overcomer.
That was a great last line to end the trailer on.
Which line was that?
Run,
Remind me.
Hannah.
Yes, it was. So, I just want to say right off the top here, and then we can get into some of the specifics. But right off the top, I found it interesting when he says cross country's not even a sport, because it seems like in courageous There was a storyline where his son wanted to get to know him better, and he wanted him to run with him, and he said, all my son wants to do is run. I don't want to run. So the end of that movie had a father-son 5K. So I just thought it was interesting how they weaved running back in.
Run, Forrest, run.
Why don't you look at the outline that we have for our episode? And
so, anyways, here, general thoughts first. Let's go with general.
General thoughts. Again, I thought it was a very well put together film. I think it's interesting because some people think that the Kendrick Brothers movies are too preachy, and I can see that perspective. However, they both Alex and Stephen Kendrick, I'm pretty sure, both have been in pastoral ministry, so they use movies as a vehicle to preach, and they're not ashamed of that. So given that criteria, given that parameter through which they choose to operate, I think they achieved their goal. So I really think that this is a good movie. The premise is about a single young lady, an individual young lady. Single's not the right way to put it. An individual young lady who comes to a school. She has a troubled past, so it's implied that she's been kicked out of multiple schools. And I think they probably could have developed that part a little bit more just to let us know where she's coming from. But she ends up being the single person on the cross-country team. There's a lot of there's an economic downturn in the community. So a bunch of people leave the factory. So this guy...
The factory shut down.
The factory shut down, and a bunch of people leave the town because of the factory, is what I meant to say. And then, so the main character, his main job is a history teacher and a basketball coach. And so he starts out and he gets like one win away from the championship. And he says, next year we'll win it. Well, then his team gets decimated and he gets assigned to coach cross country. And of course, we know from the trailer that his opinion is that cross country is not even a sport. So
I hate running.
Just a lot of hilarity ensues and a really unique twist that comes about that I'm not necessarily going to open up for you on this show because I want you to go and see the film. But, yeah, it's an all around really good movie.
All right. Well, then let's highlight the positives.
Okay. The positives are it talks about who we are in Christ. Incidentally, we're talking a lot about identity on the podcast lately. Where we've been breaking down over the last several weeks what my identity is in Christ. We have already broke down over like a 5-week series, who Christ is. And now we're kind of, visiting who we are. And I know we've touched on that and maybe even had a series about that in the past on the show. But the reason why is because it's such an important topic and it's really kind of inexhaustible because I think a lot of the troubles that our country is having right now is because we don't know who we are and we're, too afraid to admit it.
There's that. Yep. So now we shall speak the downers, the negatives.
Okay, well, one of the negatives from a purely aesthetic standpoint is the fact that it jumps several years in the future at the end, and rather than getting an older person to play the part, they just make up this young lady and try to get you to believe that she's like a second or third year college student. And I felt it wouldn't take that much more effort to have recruited one more actress to play her in a later scene to make it more authentic. So that was one of the things. And then of course, there is some cheesy dialogue. I've heard some people say that certain scenes run a little too long, but again, since I know that the Kendricks are using this as a medium to preach, that's essentially what the long scenes are doing. So I think understanding that helps you to appreciate it for what it is.
Yeah. So then, what is the biggest lesson you took away from the film?
The biggest lesson that I took away from the film is when you get down and out about who you are, to remember who you are, that who you are isn't bound up in what you do. I mean, one of the first things we usually ask people when we're getting to know them is, what do you do for a living? And that's not a bad question to ask.
No.
But it becomes a large part of how we perceive that person. And because that's the way we perceive other people, that's naturally our bent too, is to find a large part of our identity in who we are, as far as our job goes. And I just saw an interesting video actually while I was waiting for the recording session about the fact that a lot of times people are like, well, I need to preach the gospel more, so I should maybe go on a long-term missionary journey to South Africa or to some third world country to spread the gospel. And the pastor's point in this little clip was, we spend the majority of our time at work, and our work, no matter what it is, can give us opportunities for the gospel. We don't have to leave our jobs to be ministers of the gospel, because every facet of life is filled with people that struggle, that need help, that need validation, and the only one that can give us true validation is Jesus. And so to just be encouraged to bring that with us when we go to work, and to realize that we don't have to change every single thing about our lives in order to do that. Now, God might call some people to do that, but at the end of the day, what's most important is not what I do in the 9 to 5. It's the fact that I'm a blood-bought child of God. And I loved the fact that that's what this movie celebrates.
All right. So then, how would you rate this film? 1 trophy to 5 trophies.
I give this film a solid 4.5 trophies. Again, there are little nitpicks that you can do. I do my best to be honest with my reviews without being overly nitpicky, because I know that if you start to pull things apart, you can always find new things that you don't like about them. And so I try not to do that too much for you. But I would encourage you to watch this film. And before we end this episode, I just want to share with you that the gentleman, I think his first name is Cameron, who plays, one of the pivotal characters in this film that I did not give away. He actually has a really interesting story about being an overcomer, because he was a pretty high profile actor. He was on one of the Star Treks. I think it was Star Trek The Next Generation. And he had a career where he was then asked to sign up for a role. And he originally said, I will take the role. And they said, we want your character to do partial nudity. And he said, no, I don't feel comfortable doing that. And they said, well, if you don't feel comfortable doing it, we'll get you a body double. And he said, that's not good enough, because I want to avoid all appearance of evil in the acting that I do. And so he basically was blacklisted from Hollywood at that point, because he had taken a stand for morality. And so it was neat to see him getting the opportunity to get back in the acting arena, doing something that glorified God and was something that he could enjoy doing and enjoy his craft of acting. So I think a lot of times, and I think I've mentioned this too on the podcast before, we kind of get into this mode of, if it's something that I enjoy doing, it can't be God glorifying, because God calls us to make sacrifices. But I think God made us creative beings. And so the things that we're interested in, we will fall in line with God's will for our lives. I mean, he's not going to make us do something that we are totally unskilled for, and totally have zero interest in, and call it good. I think he wants us to be creative beings and wants us to use our talents. So I think it was just really encouraging about that. And then I was also kind of blown away to find out that Priscilla Shirer is the daughter of Pastor Tony Evans, who happens to be one of my favorite pastors to listen to on the radio. I did not know that until I was doing research for this review. So those are just two little semi-random factoids that you can take with you as you go into this next week. And with that, I'll say, have a great weekend and keep serving the best of masters.